Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Heroic Girls Book Club. My name is John. I'm going to tilt my camera down so I'm better centered. And we are talking about one of my favorite books of the past few years, Monstress, today. Here, I'm going to hold up Monstress. This thing, oh my word. Oh, mine's different than yours. Okay. So it is the the best. Yeah, I think Vivian's muted. Viv, can you get... Yeah, there we go. So, Monstress is just absolutely one of my favorite things of the past few years. I guess it's longer than that, 4 years or so. I had read the first, I don't know how many issues. I was buying the individual issues, and when you buy those, you have to wait like a month and a half in between each issue. And so I stopped because the story was so good. I knew I wanted to read it in larger chunks at a time. It was not satisfying for me to read 32 pages or so and then have to stop and wait a month to read the next. So I really enjoyed reading back through it in a more condensed format. So Vivian, had you read or seen this book before?
I had heard of this book, but I hadn't read it before. This was my first read through, and honestly, it had to be a 2 reads in a row.
Yeah.
To get the full story.
It's this is a complex story. It is not easy to digest. The story is incredibly dense, and the art is incredibly dense. So both of them are equally compact and just full of information. I mean, it is. Sometimes you have a great writer paired with an okay artist, or a great artist paired with a okay writer. This is just a book where you're going, this is the all-star team. I had Marjorie Liu has been around for a while, and I've read other things by her, but they're mainly projects for the big two. It's been stuff for DC and Marvel, and did not have this level of characterization and world building and everything. Sana Takeda. We'll say Takeda. Thank you. Yeah, so I threw out 2 different possibilities, and I was wrong both times. That sounds about right for me. So I had not seen her work before, I don't believe. I believe she is the native of Japan. I don't think she lives over here. And her work is just, oh my gosh, incredible. So I guess we should probably talk some specifics. Vivian, you are a Disney Imagineer, an artist, an illustrator, an animator. Can you talk a little bit about the art in Monstress? Because I'm not going to do anything except just go wow like 15 times in a row, and that's
that's pretty much what I was doing the entire time. Like you were mentioning, Sana Takeda is a Japanese artist, and who's so interesting, has basically never worked in the Japanese manga world before, which I'm sure you know is extensive.
Right.
Her goal was always to work in American comics, and that was sort of a trajectory that she wanted for herself. But interestingly, when she did try to break into the US comic scene, she was told her style was too anime looking.
Right.
And so she ended up doing some work over here with Marjorie Liu. In fact, that's how they met each other.
Right.
And then kind of took a step back and developed a style, which is the style that we're seeing here. And even I was reading an interview with Marjorie Liu, and she was mentioning that the change in Sana Takeda's artwork between the time they were working together on X-Men and what ended up being developed for this comic said that she'd never seen anything like that within an artist's oeuvre before that she had worked with in the past. So super interesting. So even if we just look at this panel here, so Sana Takeda's, her inspirations kind of come from 2 different places. So she talks a lot about ukiyo-e artwork, which is a Japanese woodblock print, and what I'm seeing here is a lot of Art Nouveau. And what's interesting is that Art Nouveau is actually inspired by Japanese ukiyo-e prints, because that's when Japan opened their borders and a lot of their artwork got exported. So that's what inspired a lot of, Van Gogh, Picasso, most of the Impressionists were inspired by this Japanese woodblock print. So a lot of times when you look at things like the Impressionists or like Art Nouveau, you look at it through a European lens, and they are sort of harkening back to Japanese artwork. What I think is so interesting about her is she's coming from that Japanese art historical place organically, because she herself is Japanese, living in Japan, is taking these sensibilities, these muted colors, which you see throughout this comic, this really controlled line and this sort of integration of the organic into the inorganic throughout the entire book. And it's so incredible because it fits the characters, it fits the plot, it fits and it fits her hand as an artist. So like there were times where I was, I would have to go back and reread something and re-look at the architecture in a room because everything fit together so nicely. I mean, just if you look at there's a word for it. It's called a whiplash curve. So if you look at the whiplash curves of her hair, I'm literally pointing at my screen, of her hair, of the curves of the monster shadow on the ground, of those are all things that you would see in like, if you think of that Japanese ukiyo-e print, the wave, right?
Yeah.
Same
which is part
shape.
of a series of paintings about Mount Fuji, taken from different aspects. I know something.
Go, John! Woo!
And considered one of the classic examples of the use of negative space, because you can see two ways if you're paying attention. There we go. Okay, I'm going to shut up again. Keep going.
No, like that's totally it, though. I mean, and that shape language is going throughout, and it represents the wild, right? And so there's shots of the inside of Sophia's laboratory, and I'm so sorry, I should have prepared some more. Maybe I can just hold it up.
Yeah.
Where you see that this is an attempt to control an uncontrollable environment, right?
Right.
So you can see that at the base, because this whole area is built on ruins, you see things like these beautiful stained glass windows.
Yeah.
Organic, beautiful shapes. And then what's built on top of it are these horrible pipes. There's all this infrastructure that's trying to be suppressed on top of it. Right. And that's really sort of the world that the characters are living in, where there's these characters that have this organic connection to nature that are trying to be suppressed and used into some kind of a product.
Yeah, it's the what I had written down plot wise, and it's interesting seeing it mirrored in the art, is the attempt to impose order on chaos. It's they're trying to control something that isn't meant to be controlled, and twist things to their own purposes and things like that. You see that over and over again, trying to duplicate what some people have in nature by force, basically by extracting it from them, or unearned power, stuff that they shouldn't have. So
absolutely.
So the things I noticed about one of the things I noticed about the art, it is dark. It is so dark. It reminded me, and I know this is not the case, I was thinking, reading it, looking at it, going, you remember Batman, the animated series, how one of the things they did was they didn't give any of the artists that worked on that white paper. Everything was drawn on black to make sure that just underneath everything, it was dark. And I know that is not what happened here, but it kind of felt like it. This book is so dark, and normally that might lead to muddy or hard to read, and it is not. It is gorgeous, as we've talked about. And we were, normally in a creator-owned projects like this, fairly often it's a 50-50 split, unless you're like a writer like Robert Kirkman or something, and then you who did Walking Dead, I'm sorry, and then you get an artist, and then you throw them away and you grab another artist because you can do that. But whatever they're paying Sana is not enough. Because I know the relative amounts of work that it takes. There are so many pages where she just has insane amounts of filigree and detail lines, and that's one of the things that actually makes the panel dark, is so many lines. And again, that could be a bad thing, but it's not in her case. And I was looking at it just going, this is an insane amount of work. How could anybody, those top panels are perfect examples. Comic book artists cheat all the time. Somebody would have done that and they would have cast a long shadow from a wall, and just, a quarter or half of the panel would have been black. It just would have been dark. She doesn't do that. She draws everything. And
I mean, like if you just look at this panel up here on the top, that's definitely, if you know the artist Arthur Rackham, who was, an illustrator who was pulling from the Art Nouveau, that's totally what he would do. And these colors that are being used throughout are colors that you would find in nature. Like there is no plastic colors, inorganic colors in this entire book. It is,
right.
The greens are olive, the red, the oranges and the yellows are burnt. Everything just looks so aged.
Right. It's I made a note of the color palette. We had a lot of earth tones in here, just very, very solid earth tones. I wanted there to be a more clear line between the order imposed world using the cold blue but I'm not sure that it really holds up. So a lot of earth tones, and it lends to that feeling of it almost being an old uncovered manuscript. It also lends to the feeling of this being all organic and naturally occurring, not not technologically based, but organically based. The color palette's beautiful, and we don't have to thank a separate colorist because Sanna's taking care of that as well. I would imagine she's doing it digitally because I don't know how she's doing it, period, much less handling both jobs. So this is an incredible work of art. It's just impressive to me on almost every single level. It's incredible.
Absolutely. I think also, oh boy, what were you just talking about? Oh, so I think even though this is like the world of, there's kind of the two sides of the order and the chaotic world, right? I think something that they bring up in the story is really interesting. And I think this is probably another reason why the story gets compared a lot to Game of Thrones. Is I think that it is Yvette that brings up this shaman empress who had science beyond anything that they currently use, which tells me that the story we're looking at is basically taking place in a dark ages. So in the same way that when we're seeing the story of Ice and Fire, this is kind of already the end of this civilization, right? The Valerians have already done all the greatest architecture and artwork has already been made. And now it's sort of the stinky remnants of post-war. And so this is the post-war world.
Yeah, it's I was thinking of the other great example of that is the Lord of the Rings, which is at the end of the middle age of man. The elves are leaving and everything. We're getting the very tail end of all the magic kind of leaving the world. That's where that story is set. So they're constantly going by ruins of great civilizations that really aren't there more. Even like the men of Gondor living in these ancient, incredible structures that you went, oh, they didn't build that. So it's everyone's kind of living on the edges of it. That's a really cool observation. We should probably try to recap the story, and I was avoiding this because it is so difficult. But okay, let's just say our protagonist is Micah. All right, Micah Half-Wolf. I can do Half-Wolf. I'll do that part. Micah Half-Wolf is an archaic, which is we find out kind of a half-breed between men and ancients or the old gods. I'm a little vague on which one of those two it is because I think they're two distinct things. And so anyway, she is a half-breed. She looks fully human, though. You can't tell that she is not fully human. And she, at the beginning of the story, is evidently intentionally put herself into bondage, into slavery. Humans and the archaic were at war. We're in an uneasy truce right now. And the human side is run by a matriarchy. It's run by the nuns of Cambia, I think. Is that right? Yeah, the Cambian sisters. Yeah, so they are run by that society, and they experiment. Again, we're talking about that imposing order on chaos. The archaic have these magic abilities or these, impressive abilities naturally. And the nuns or the sisters on the human side look like they're trying to basically steal that for themselves. And one of the ways they've done that is by dehumanizing the archaics so that they can feel okay about experimenting on them. And the experimenting is brutal. It is, killing small children and things and vivisecting them is just awful things that they're doing. So she's entered that intentionally on a mission of revenge. And what we learn, the reason that she is the title character in the book Monstress is that she has something inside of her, a a monster, an old god, something like that, that is kind of bonded with her, that in times of stress will awaken and kill the things around her or break her out of a jail cell, which happens early in the book. It is not a power she fully controls. It is a complete separate entity that she sometimes is bargaining with. We see that at different times in the book, but it gives her these incredible abilities. So she just cuts a bloody swath through this place to assassinate a couple people that she believes killed her mother, and she's trying to track down all the people that might have been involved in that. And because the humans and the archaic were friends, not super long ago, in her mother's time when she was a child, the truce was much stronger and they were friends. So we are kind of in a dark time where people are at each other's throats that used to live side by side. Maybe a metaphor for the rest of us right now.
A not so veiled metaphor.
Not so veiled metaphor. So she carries out this assassination and leaves. And then the Order of Nuns have a Mother Superior who shows up and resurrects the people that she killed, because, or at least a couple of them, because it didn't take. And everyone has now seen her power and they are after her. There are people on both the archaic and the human sides are using her as a pawn. The ancients and they call it the Dusk Court is this other political organization on the archaic side. They want to grab her to like kind of sock her away, and the humans are after her because they want whatever power she has inside of her. And yeah, so the story that we get here is her attempting to escape, thinking maybe she had found safety, although she wasn't that trustful of the safety, and then finding out that the other side's trying to get her too, and then the sides conflicting, and all sorts of backstabbing and betrayals, Game of Thrones type stuff, goes on through there. So that I think that's about as much of it as I want to tell. I'm not sure I want to say more about the actual plot. We can go over some of the characters. Micah is the main character, the protagonist, and she has the most adorable frickin' friend, Kippa, who's this little girl, fox girl, which that's very Japanese right there. And if I was a little more awake, I would remember what the multi-tailed fox spirits that are agents of chaos would. Maybe that's something that you could pull off, but they're
Kitsune?
Sure, yeah, let's say that. Yes, it is. I just was mispronouncing it badly in my head. Yes, that's it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And we see that in multiple things, but that's a very Japanese thing from my memory, is animals with many tails being somehow more than animals and smarter and everything like that. So we see this little, you see her in the bottom few panels there, holding her tail. She is the most adorable thing, and it's such a bizarre and striking contrast to this just ugliness and murder going on around her, and then there's just this angelic little kid in the middle of it, maybe there to like ground and humanize Micah a little bit, because she does have these moments where she isn't necessarily the most likable person on the planet, and I think having someone like this tagging along with her makes her not just completely go off the rails. As in a meta sense, as the plot device, that's what keeps her grounded. But I love the reason that she followed her in the first place. When Micah breaks out of the prison, breaks the unbreakable collar that's been put around her neck, frees everyone else runs away. She tells them, "Oh, there's tunnels under here. You can use those to get to the sewers. You can get out of the city." And then Kippa follows Micah, and Micah finds that out and says, "Why are you here?" And she goes, "Well, I thought this would be safe because you're really good at killing." So I thought, that's accurate. So she has a couple of those
perfectly logical
kind of wry observations throughout there. At one point, she says that maybe she's not always good. Micah's not always good, but she's trying to be, which I think is, in a world that is very Games of Thrones-ish, where everybody seems like they're a backstabbing weasel. Micah's at least trying to do what she thinks is the right thing. So, I think there's actually some truth to that. So those two are run together. We see some flashbacks, and then right again at the end, Tuya, who is Micah's best friend as a child, and they had been imprisoned together and broken out at some point. We don't really fully see that story when they were little children. And then right at the end, we see her, and she's actually involved in the Dusk Court in some fashion, although I don't think that's been fully explained. And Micah is not aware of this. She got a little hint of it because Tuya has an eagle that flew by, and Micah kind of recognized it, but went, "No, that can't be right." But yeah, it is right. So I'm very interested to see the nature of their relationship at this point.
I
Sophia,
actually had a. Oh, sorry.
go
I
ahead, go
just
ahead.
had about Tuya. I had a. I was just wondering, like, if their relationship was romantic. I know we have this conversation once an episode, but
Better you
wait,
than
are
me.
they gay?
Yeah.
But I just really, in the way that they were bickering with one another, and the way that Micah really was really seeking to reunite with her and
Right.
considered to be a part of her overall plan. It seemed like Tuya wanted, or that maybe there was something else to their relationship. Also, I did have a question here that I wanted to post to you regarding
Sure.
Tuya. So I'm going to forget his name. I'm going to go to my second page of my names list.
Yeah.
So Sir Corvin de Oro of the Dusk Court
Right.
calls
That's one of,
Tuya Baroness.
yes.
So when right before that scene, there's a flashback of when Micah and Tuya were young children, originally captured and imprisoned, and Tuya is spitting out her own food to make sure that Micah has enough to eat.
Right.
So if Tuya is a baroness of the Dusk Court, which would
Right.
probably make her an ancient,
Probably.
then was she specifically there imprisoned trying to keep Micah alive? That was a wild theory that I had that I wanted to post to you.
And I had a similar thought because of the very kind of intricate Games of Thrones plotting. Every time we see someone who seems to be fully on their side, there's at least a partial betrayal of some sort. And it when you see that Tuya is in the Dusk Court and is a noble in the Dusk Court, you do start to wonder, how come that never came up before? They're supposed to be best friends. How did
Yeah.
how did that the fact that she's nobility in this ultra secret powerful organization, how had that never been mentioned up until this point? So yeah, I
Mhm.
did. There's a suspicion, which has not been proven one way or the other, that she might have. It'll be interesting to see if the relationship was built on anything but uh, a dishonest attempt to keep tracks on Micah because she's powerful and the Dusk Court was interested in her whereabouts. We'll have to see. That question has not been answered yet, but I certainly think with the way this thing is so intricately plotted and all the twists and turns as far as feeling you could trust no one, that would be a big reveal, and I think it's a very possible reveal. It could go the other way. It's not. I'm not saying that's a sure thing, but it wouldn't
Mhm.
completely shock me if they decided to go that route. So yeah, so the other characters, I guess we should go over, are Sophia, who was the woman who was conducting experiments on the archaic at the very beginning when Micah and Kippa and the others broke out and got free. Um, Micah almost burnt her to death with a flamethrower, but she's coming back. She got better, and but the big one was Yvette that we mentioned.
Mhm.
And what we find out about Yvette was that she is the one that Micah was after. The reason she got herself imprisoned was to get close to Yvette, because Yvette was her mom's friend back before the two sides were at war, and betrayed her mother and got her mother killed. So Micah's after Yvette and kills her, fully kills her. She's dead, and gets a piece of a mask. I guess we should bring up the mask. There's a mask which might have something to do with the fact that Micah has some power embedded in her, but it might not. I'm not 100% sure if we figured that out even. I thought for sure it was, but then there were a couple things that made me think, no, that the mask is something else. It's something, different. Um, so anyways, she got this piece of a mask and she found it, and evidently Micah might have another piece somewhere, or her mother had a piece. Um, so she kills her, and then the mother superior of the organization shows up, the head of the nuns that are this matriarchal society that is running the humans, running the human affairs. and she resurrects her, which I'm like, well, that's cool. And she brings her back from the dead. And she wears this ornate, we're talking about things that have filigree and ornate line work in here. The mask she's wearing and her armor are just amazing. And
Yeah.
at some point, way at the towards the end of the book, that mask comes off. And again, you can see Yvette down in the bottom right there. She's been experimenting, basically like eating pieces of archaic and injecting things into her body, and she is slowly turning into some sort of monster, although she still doesn't have that natural connection to this magical energy that the archaic do. She's been experimenting on herself, and I suspected that Mother Superior was doing the same because we weren't able to see her face. And then at the end, she's more than she appears on the surface, and it's interesting when there's all this emphasis being placed on purity of race, purity of blood, that the people who appear to be leading the humans that are demanding this purity appear to be very impure themselves. They
Or
don't.
just something else entirely.
Yeah, they're in a different category altogether.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's interesting seeing the leaders not adhere to the standards that they're setting for everybody else, and you start getting the feeling that there's this manipulation going on of them doing this because they want to experiment on the archaea, because they want that power for themselves. There isn't. I'm not. It isn't religious fanaticism that is blind. These are people that are promoting this fanaticism for a purpose, to give themselves permission to be able to do these awful things that, in hopefully better times, people would be horrified and disgusted at. Again, let's apply that to today's world. I'll let you guys do that on your own time, but
well,
yeah.
Something else that I was thinking about, just overall, producer Patty, if you wanted to pull that last image back up again. The fashion in this book is amazing.
Yeah.
And I think it's appropriate to pronounce it amazing, because it's truly, like you were saying, the embellishments on everything. Mother Superior in this scene, she's bad. She looks bad, right? She's wearing all black, this structured lace. And I think that this really speaks to this kind of matriarchal world. I don't know if you've heard this before, that women don't wear makeup for men. Women wear makeup for other women, right?
Yes,
and because, and no, and so I love that in this world where men are just like ancillary somewhere else.
They're almost non-present. If it wasn't for that one count, I don't know if there's another character with a name that's a man. I mean, everybody's a woman. There's
Rezik, who's I think the brother of Atena.
Oh yeah. Okay.
And who doesn't speak till the very end, and he says like hi, and the book is over.
Yeah.
And but I love that this world was there's so many different uniforms, and there's so many different costumes. They show rank, they show place, and it's just such a great world builder. I did want to point one thing out about Yvette. So I think that her changes were coming from her proximity to the mask.
Yes.
And her interactions with it. So whatever the mask is, which I agree, I don't think we have all our answers about that yet. I think it was kind of one ringing her. If she's the golem, kind of being drained and changed, maintaining a human form, but there's something inside of her that she's now utterly connected to it. And
she can sense where the mask is from a great distance. She's like, golem is a great analogy there. Just drawn to it, has to have it. It's her precious. She wants it back.
And
whatever it is.
In terms of these two female characters, Sophia and Yvette, something I thought was so interesting on 2 points. So I'm just going to say the first one first. Even though Micah, the main character, has put herself in this situation to kill Yvette, she didn't remember her name. So in the very beginning, she tells in her voiceover that it took her, 2 or 3 years to even find the name of this person. Right. So whatever's happened to her memories is pretty severe. And then the other thing, this is just a story point that I thought was so interesting, is you see Sophia, very powerful, in control of this whole organization, purchase people, murder people, and you think to yourself, she's the big bad, right?
Right.
She's who we're after. Nope, she gets burned alive and
Yeah.
stabbed in the back and left for dead. And she ends the story bedridden.
Yeah.
And then Yvette, you think, oh, because this is the actual big bad. This is who we're after. And she ends up on a leash, sniffing after her precious,
Right.
just like Gollum leading the fellowship after the ring, right?
Right.
So it was interesting. Like, to me, it made for such great pacing to feel all this energy build toward this character and then just almost stumble right into the next mystery.
Right.
As far as Yvette goes, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was going to say, and then when you're done with the human side of the chain, I think we're done, although Lord knows there could be something else out there. Then we at different times in the story, we move focus over to the Dusk Court, and there's another organization that I'm not sure its name that are not people that are not members of the Dusk Court that are also interested in Micah. So yeah, we have this whole there's a whole nother set of mysteries, and we've seen very little of the Dusk Court. We had the Queen of Wolves, was that I think?
Yeah, the Queen of Wolves people.
Yeah. And the Queen of Wolves people, and then which I believe is going to be the Dusk Court, and then we have something else, and I don't know what the something else is. Oh, that is a great shot of Yvette there, and the Mother Superior, Yvette being on your left, and showing that insane detail and filigree again, and then on Yvette's face, she's this wizened old crone, all these crags and lines on her face that are so well done. And just insane. I'm just here's me just going wow again. But
producer Patty, do you have page 46? You showed it earlier. It's Yvette in her room while she's kind of villain monologuing before Micah kills her. Yvette and what's her name? Yvette's.
This is not Yvette.
So it's Yvette in her room, and there's a couple of shots of like where she takes her tea before Micah comes in to kill her.
Right.
And she's got, if you look back here, do you see this tapestry she's got on her wall? You get another shot of it from another angle. Also, this peacock robe that she wears for the entire book.
Yeah.
Everything, she's got that old god stuff all around her.
Right. The eyes are a big deal. And Micah has an eye tattooed on her chest. Yeah.
And so that sort of connection to what Micah's got on her, what these people are searching for, it comes up again and again. And I felt that peacock robe that Yvette was wearing was such a great sign that she has now connected herself.
Yeah.
She's choosing to enrobe herself, connect herself to the old gods. And then when you see the Mother Superior later, she is also wearing that same kind of, I guess it's also almost like a vaginal shape pattern, right? And she's got it all like lining her gown.
Here's an interesting idea that I just thought of while you were talking about that, because I noted the peacock thing and I wasn't thinking about it in terms of it mirroring the peacocks have those symbols on their tails, so that when they open them up, it looks like a bunch of eyes and scares off predators, but they're not real. And that might be a kind of a mirroring of Yvette, who wants this power but can't have it, so she's faking it and getting it another way, another way of showing that she's trying to grab this old one's power that she doesn't have the right to, this old god's power that she's not really privy to. She's trying very hard to have it, but can't. So I don't know, it occurred to me, I haven't fully thought that one through because it came up with it like 10 seconds ago, but I like it. So I'm going to say that's the idea.
I would definitely. I mean, I think the fact that she's wearing it, right, the same way a peacock is just like, hey-oh, got all their eyeballs out there. But yeah, so the thing I thought was interesting was all these creatures that are around the eye, right? So the eye is centered, and then there's a huge mystery that's going throughout the story of these massive floating, walking, what do you call those, titans?
Yeah, something like that. It looks actually like the kind of thing that is inside of Micah. It looks like they might be the same. So there's these massive things that look like old gods that don't do anything. People say they're just the ghosts of the old gods who are all dead. And so they have these shadows moving around that ignore everyone, don't seem to do anything. But you get the feeling that if they did come back, everyone would be in a lot of trouble. So, yeah, we see them all over the place. I noticed something in that tapestry just looking at it now.
Mhm.
Directly beneath is that kind of jackal-headed character. That's one of the immortal ancients that we see is a person with a jackal's head. So I didn't pay enough attention to that in the background last time. I saw the dragon. I went, "Oh, that's a nice dragon," but now I see the the jackal head. So we have the eye representing the old gods up there coming down, giving us the ancients somehow, and then I don't, maybe the archaea are the like kind of. We know that some of them are far less than human appearing. Maybe that's all the other various monsters that are around. I don't. We'll see if that's symbology carries out and keeps making sense the farther we go along. I think that's all you can do.
Yeah, definitely. Like the whole, as far as the world building goes, there being society, there being, and then the religion that's laid over top of it is
Right.
also incredible.
I always remember when I'm thinking about world building. A quote. I'm going to paraphrase Neil Gaiman, who is fantastic at this, by the way, and he said, "You don't have to explain all the rules of the universe that you're creating for people. You don't have to explain every little thing. You just have to leave the reader with the impression that there are rules, that they're out there somewhere." And that's, I bought into this 110%. Although I do feel like Marjorie has created a complex set of rules. She knows what's pulling all the strings back there. She's not pulling a J.J. Abrams, and it has no idea how to answer the questions she's raising. But I do feel the economy of space and art and words that they have to create this vivid world. The fact they're able to do it in so quickly with so little written information, with a lot of the story is told in the pictures. People
Mhm.
sometimes don't give artists the credit in a comic for how much of the story load they're carrying. They really are telling a lot of the story with the pictures, and this world building is insanely good. This is a masterclass. I don't know if I've seen it done better. Maybe like Saga. Maybe it's. Uh, I would put probably Monstress before Saga in that sense. And then there were a couple other things I thought about when we're talking about the old gods and things like that. Is that this feels like the old god stuff feels like H.P. Lovecraft filtered through
Mm.
Japanese eyes. Very the Cthulhu mythos type monsters. We should mention that Micah only has one arm, and then when the thing inside her comes out, it comes out through the stump where her arm used to be.
Who
And
did that
then
remind you of?
what's the I don't know. I don't know.
Ashitaka from Mononoke Hime,
Oh
Princess
yeah, yes, yes,
Mononoke,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And
yeah. Okay,
he's become basically infected with nature and the old
right.
gods, and
Yeah,
it's like bursting Akira style out of his hand.
right. I was trying to think of
The
someone who actually had one arm, but no, he has two. He's just that it's infected and has it inside it.
Yes, another character that has loses part of his arm is Finn from Adventure Time. Ends up with
Yeah,
a stump, and then the little flower grows out of it, and eventually he's kind of able to use it again.
right, right.
A little bit like this, yeah.
I played a Japanese video game, Tales of Berseria, and it had a similar thing. There was the main protagonist is Velvet, and she becomes a demon, which you get if you filled with too much malevolence. You know the way it happens. And she ends up having an arm that she keeps bandaged up that turns into this big demon claw, and she can suck the life out of other demons. So she ends up, cleaning out the world or everything. So I don't know if that's a common theme in Japanese culture, this possessed arm type motif, but I've certainly seen it multiple times relatively quick together. So yeah, that's there's something. And
Yeah, I mean, oh, wait, sorry. One more reference though.
yeah,
I don't know if you caught this. When Micah first meets the cat, they
yeah,
kind of have this sort of back and forth, and the cat catches her out saying something, and he says lying, and
yeah,
there's
oh
just
yeah,
this
yeah.
one long panel, and I was like, I wonder if it's a Saga reference.
The cat that jumped off the page for me. And I think it did the first time too. It's a lion cat reference right in the middle of the book.
Yeah.
Not slap you in the face, take you out of the book thing, but I think it was an obvious. I don't think you can put a talking cat in your book and have it say lying as the only word without you going immediately to that your head takes you to lion cat.
Yeah,
Yeah, that
'cause
cat.
even
Uh, he was the bane of my existence because I read through once just for story, and then I read back through to get character names, and I was convinced that I had missed the name of this stupid cat. I was flipping back and forth and back and forth, and I could not find it. So, um, yeah, so there's we see a background character in the human lands. It's a woman telling children that cats aren't to be trusted and that you should kill them if you find them because they're spies and they're backstabbers and they're thieves. And then we see that outside the human walls, there's a little bit different relationship with cats, and because we see the cat both before Micah goes in and on her mission of vengeance, and then he's there to rescue her again when she's coming out. But like almost everybody else in this book, his motives are her. I'm not sure if we even gender the cat. Are not pure. I'm going to assume her because you know what, everybody else is
that's actually a good call. Yeah.
yeah, pretty good call. So that her motives are less than pure because yeah, everyone has complex allegiances that lie outside of just being Micah's friend. We haven't found a
Hmm.
single person except for Kippa, who is our innocent in all amid all this madness and evil and bloodshed. Everyone else seems to have some sort of ulterior motive. You know that is
Yeah.
trying to use Micah or kill her or something for their own purposes, including the demon that's inside her, that the old god. It tries to make force her into this Faustian bargain where he gets to take control of the body. I'm like, this is a bad idea. I've seen enough movies to know don't do that. But
Don't trust the alien inside you.
no.
So speaking of the cat, so something
Mhm.
I thought was super clever here. There was a couple of names, like you're saying, it jumped off the page to you.
Right.
This one jumped off to me. He's part of a class of necromancers, right? He's
Yeah.
not a
Oh,
necromancer as in dead. He's a
yeah.
necromancer as in a cat,
Cat. Yeah.
which is a Japanese word for cat.
Yep.
And that busted me up. And
I
then
don't think I got that, but now that you said it immediately, I knew where we were going with that one.
exactly. He's a
Yeah.
necromancer. And then this person he's talking to, I think this one is Tongs. She Tongs?
Yeah. The
No,
other
this is
cat.
this is Flay. No,
Oh,
she's
yeah.
this woman here who is threatening them. So
Oh, right, right.
she is one of the inquisitrixes, which
Yeah.
is like the most hilarious, sexy like take on the Spanish Inquisition.
Yeah.
So I feel like even though there is no biblical references, there is still some kind of a what we would consider like a church
Yeah.
hierarchy, right? There's nuns, there's a mother superior. They discuss Eden a
With
lot, like I'm a child of Eden.
yeah. There
That's
it
mhm.
and again it reminds me of some manga that I've read where they're
Yeah.
portraying a fantasy Western civilization, and they have that. They love the Gothic architecture and will have the cathedrals and the guy wearing the Pope hat and everything, but then the religious underlying principles are very kind of not Western at all. They're off in some other directions. And yeah, you do get a strong church feeling. This matriarchal, they're addressed as sisters and things, which is more of a Western style nun. They're referred to as nuns at one point, I believe. So yeah, it has this it has this outside appearance of kind of Western civilization, but just everything so heavily flavored Japanese. It's
Yeah. Well,
in the
to
best
me
possible way.
yeah, it's definitely East Asian, right? It's kind of
Right.
like the East Asian Middle Ages fantasy story, right? Because even all the magic is sort of more leaning towards what I would say is like an East Asian myth, right? Like what you would
Right.
even there's like a monkey that's hanging out
Oh
with the
yeah.
unnamed group, right? And that's a really famous Chinese story that's been
Right.
I only know it as Sayuki, which is the Japanese name, but that's like the
Right.
monkey that flies on the cloud.
Yeah. The
That's
Monkey
like the
King. Yeah.
whole inspiration of Dragon Ball, right? But of
Right.
course, its origins go back so much further than that. But so we get to see these little things here. So there's not what we would call a traditional dragon, but there is that these many eyes. There's kind of
Right.
a Japanese horror to everything, and then
Oh yeah. You're going to know this one? That it's begins with an I. Famous Japanese horror manga creator. That I think it begins with an I. I know his work when I see it, and it's very intricate and detailed. And he has these incredible little short stories that are fantastic. There's our Lovecraftian slash Peacock slash Japanese ancient elder one of them. They're seeing
are
the
you talking
ghost
about
of
the guy who did Uzumaki?
Yeah,
All
sure.
the swirls.
Yeah, well, yeah. Let's just say I am. I don't know.
Is it Ito Junji?
Yes, that's it. Him, and it was fantastic. I knew he was so famous that it was someone that you definitely heard of. I just didn't remember his name. I always look at it and go, "That's Japanese. I'm not going to pronounce it, but I recognize it," and I move on. So, so yeah, I did. Interesting, you brought up the Monkey King reference. I caught that, and the Monkey King was one of the ancients, I believe, if I was following along
Mhm.
correctly, is one of the immortals that were the result of the very first elder gods mating with humans. That's where those happened, um,
Yeah.
and then yeah, so and then I guess yeah, I've lost a little bit track of the mythology because that also was my memory of how the archaic were created, and but there's obviously something a little bit different happening there. The ancients are immortal; they've just been around
He's gonna
forever.
be so cute.
Yeah. Oh, this was a psych out for me here. That this woman has a kitsune mask on, and everyone else is an animal person in there. And I just thought, oh, that's cool armor for the fox girl. And then she tilts it up, and there's a person underneath.
There's a
So
person inside.
the person
That's
underneath.
so
Oh,
funny.
surprise! That they I was 100% convinced this was just a going to be another animal person in this race of ancients, and instead, no, it was actually a human being. Well, as far as we can tell, it's a human being.
Yeah, I
So,
mean, it sounds like you need to check your inherent biases before you assume that people aren't a person.
looks
People
like a
aren't.
fox, talks like a fox. Yeah, but um, yeah.
I
So
really liked this scene here because this is sort of the first time you see if you kind of, to use your terms, of like the ordered world versus the chaotic world. So this is
right,
the natural world of the archaics, the ancients,
right,
and they've got this beautiful decor on the outside, some kind of, it looks very courtly.
yeah,
And the second you go right through that doorway in the bottom of this frame, what are they doing? They've got archaic children chained up,
right.
ready to be killed to like look for their ghosts, or like see if their ghosts are going to give them information.
Yeah, well, I was really hoping there was going to be a good guy in all this, somewhere, some sense of salvation at the end of one of these trips, but there's not. The ancients seem to be almost as bad, if not just equally as bad as the humans there, in that idea of wanting power that they didn't earn themselves, taking it. The fact that they're immortal has not made them bold; it's made them
Complacent.
cautious and kind of complacent and wanting nothing more than to protect their own lives, no matter what the cost of to anyone else is. That's the kind of feeling I got from them. They're very manipulative, and they could be using this incredible lifespan in a different way, and they're not. They've just made it all
Yeah.
about them. So
I mean, it's
and
such a great statement to say that the vulnerable are always vulnerable, right?
yeah,
So it would, I think, if this was a simpler story, you would have opened the doors up and it would have been, oh, it's human children, because
right,
the archaics also do the bad things
right,
it's like, it turns it into a both side statement rather than
right.
what often is true, which is that children are vulnerable and they will always be vulnerable.
Yeah, uh, very often. I mean, there are a few scenes where we see these kind of like torturing and vivisections and stuff, and the number of children that were in there was just it's horrific in itself. You don't need to dress up, but the number of kids that they have that end up getting fed into this monstrous machine that are killed, and you just go. Unironically, where is the humanity in any of these people? How could they've somehow managed to convince themselves that the archaics are not people, the humans have. But I'm like,
Hmm.
it's looking like a kid and talking like a kid. I don't think I could do it. Yeah, here's the
Yeah.
and the cats are in on it too. Look, nobody's pure in this thing.
And that bottom cat looks like my cat.
You have a cat with three tails? I wouldn't trust it then.
Oh.
But yeah, the cats are actually listed at a couple places towards the end of the book. We get some meta narration by a cat that is explaining how this world works a little bit. Not too much, but a little bit. And one of the things they do is list the 5 races that exist in the world. And I'm going to see if I can do it. It's the humans, the cats, the archaic, the old gods, and the ancients. There we go. So there's five of them. Those are all the things that people know. You can categorize everything in those 5 categories. So the cats are kind of put on, there's our spread. The cats are put on this equal footing, as humans and everyone else. Cats are not just pets, or not just sidekicks. They have their own agendas as well. So I'll be interested to see if we see more structure and order, and if we get some court of cats at some point that also has some part to play in all this, because it feels kind of like we do. And here's some non-exploitative nudity, which is peppered throughout the book a little bit. I'm sure that there's a 12-year-old out there that would giggle over this, but they would never make it far enough into the book to do that, because the themes are so adult, not in a pejorative or exploitative way. It's just a grown-up story, and I don't think it would interest them enough to get to any parts that would do that. So it's cool. I just absolutely adore this book. It's
Absolutely.
I shouldn't point out that Marjorie Liu, who is the writer on this book, won the Eisner Award for Best Writer. She was the first ever woman to win Best Writer for that was like 2 or 3 years ago. I think maybe a little bit farther. It's 2016 or 17, somewhere in there. And when that happened, I was like, no, Gail Simone, Kelly Sue DeConnick, Louise Simonson, somebody's won it. There are all these great female writers I had going in my head. I said, one of those has won sometime. No, never. So this book, Marjorie Liu and this book broke a glass ceiling on writing and awards for writing. Female artists have been awarded before. I knew that, like Fiona Staples won for Saga, but I just assumed that there wasn't a big category like this where no woman had ever gotten the highest honor, but there was. And I'm so glad, and it was so deserving. And now I'm just mad on behalf of all the fantastic female writers that I know. I'm like, how have you been ignoring these other people? They're fantastic. But
so pretty.
Yeah, I do. It's beautiful and gorgeous, and I'm going to stick with my my Lovecraft analogy. It really does feel like Japanese H.P. Lovecraft. They're these ancient old gods that might destroy us all, but they barely care that we exist. They're just so beyond us that that we're not important to them. But Micah, this one half-breed slave girl that is missing part of her arm, she has one of these things stuck inside her. I'm pretty sure that's what we were getting from this book.
Yeah.
And she's able to bargain with it and control it in a sense, and in a way that you would think would not be possible. This should be like, John Carpenter's The Thing or something. It just takes her over and goes nuts and spreads throughout the world. So, so it's interesting. The question is she a monstress because of the physical manifestation of this beast that's inside her, or is it her own kind of anger and quest for vengeance and things that are making her monstrous because of things she's willing to do in order to achieve vengeance, which is another, I think, fairly common theme in some, losing sense of self, sense of soul. So I think, why not both? You have the Taco Bell girl go like this.
Why not both?
Why not both? So it's so that, that was my take on the title. They said monstrous because she has they named the thing she is a monstra at one point in the book. The nuns, the sisters, have a name for what's inside her. The Inquisitrix, when she comes back, says the monstra walk the earth. So that there's a name for whatever it is that she is, and people have seen it before or have legends about it or something. So it's interesting to figure out why we're calling her monstrous, and I think there are multiple ways to look at it. She is very cold and calculating at different points, and you get the feeling that she would allow bad things to happen to other people in order to get to achieve her vengeance that she wants. And whether that will consume her. She does. She could have broken out earlier and saved. There was one little child again that got taken off to be vivisected, and we see that child dragged off, and then and she does nothing, and then later she breaks out of the cage, and you go up there, and when she confronts Sophia, you see the head of the kid sitting there and the internal organs sitting around. The kid that she did not save early got vivisected.
And there's interns cutting his hands and feet off. I mean, producer Patty, can you pull that image up again? I just wanted to say something about it. I think that it's so cool to have this sort of a reverse Snow White. It's not, she is not there for looking at, she's in a container.
Yeah.
because she is very, very dangerous. And I
Right.
thought that was such a great imagery for this, the fantasy angle of this tale and how everything sort of turned on its head. I love that they included this shot and gave it so much space and breathing room.
Yeah. And again, just keep talking about the filigree and the Art Nouveau style, which I did not. I think I must have inherently known that at some point, but it didn't occur to me to do something smart like write it down, because you recognize the Art Nouveau style, and I go, yes, obviously, but I wasn't smart enough to make a note on it. Yeah, and it's another also example though of that like end of an era or Dark Ages type feel, because this contraption, which is this coffin that's supposed to suppress Micah and the thing inside her so that she can be transported and taken against her will, is the way that they discuss it. To my mind, it was fairly clear that this is some relic of an older age that they don't fully understand. I don't think if this thing broke, they could make another one. That was my deep impression, was that this is something beyond what they know. So that it's a remnant of this other great older civilization.
Absolutely.
So we're getting pretty close to the end, aren't we? I think so.
Yeah,
we got a couple minutes left. We're there. Look at that. We never end on time. But
that was perfect.
So let's talk about this. This is another one of those ones that sometimes I find unsatisfying when we read something that's a part of an ongoing and you get to the end and you're going, I only have part of a story here and everything. And I can't say, you can't make me say anything bad about this book. It is so rich and detailed and stuff. And I read this at the time it came out, and then I just kind of forgot. By the time the second one came out, I was not paying attention, and I just forgot about it. They're well into this thing at this point. I'm going to have to go and buy the rest of these. This is not optional for me. It's mandatory. We're going to go. Oh, look, so we get a real kitsune. How many tales do they have? 9? Is that right? The Japanese folklore ones, something like that.
I think they can have. I mean, they're shapeshifters.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Yeah, if you meet a beautiful woman on the side of the road, she's probably secretly a fox.
Yeah, well, in a different way than you might be thinking at first. There was a hint in there. I thought I would mention it, that Micah might have other relatives out there, and I was wondering if that woman that was in the dusk court towards the end that had the mask on, she has that long straight hair cut in kind of the same fashion as Micah. Mm-hmm. I have nothing but conjecture to base this on. I went, oh, it's going to be like Leia, the sister. There it is. But I could be like really reaching there. I have no idea if that's what happens.
Their faces, though, were drawn so similarly.
Yeah.
And I think that woman also had the same haircut that Micah's mother did as well. Right. So I also had a similar,
Mako was the mother, I think.
Hang on. Let me go back to page 1 of the
I didn't write down every last name. I got all the big ones, but then
her name is Moriko.
Noriko. I knew it ended in the ko, but I didn't remember the rest of it. There's another thread to pull at, and Micah finds a photo at Yvette's place that shows a group of people that were all together when the mask was found and when Micah got the thing in her, and you get the feeling that was the start of the betrayal where Micah's mother was killed. So she's like a lot of people in these vengeance-driven tales. She has a list, and she crossed one off, and of course then has to erase that because she's back on the list. She popped back up, but I get the feeling that's going to be part of the plot. Is her tracking down all the different people that are in this photo that she feels betrayed her and her mother. I'm going to go the highest recommendation for Monstress. It is way, way up there as far as great books to read. It's very dense. Give it a little bit of a chance if you're finding it too confusing at the beginning, because the more you immerse yourself in this world, all the pieces start falling into place a little bit. It's one of those ones you'll read halfway through and then go back to the beginning now that you understand some of that stuff and read again. But that's great. This is a book you should read more than once. And let's talk about next month. And I have not the right one here, but because I'm a nerd and I bought this giant, massive hardback because I love it so much. And we have Velvet by Ed Brubaker and Steve Epting. I think Steve. This is a period set spy piece. It's pretty much James Bond, except that it turns out that Miss Moneypenny is actually the real badass spy. She's working as the secretary in the MI6 type organization. And it's in a sexist time. All the men are just having her fetch coffee and stuff like that. And there is intrigue in the office where a traitor kills a bunch of them and frames her for the murder. And then it turns out she was a secretary because the head of MI6 gave her a cush job after, during the war, she had taken out half of Germany. So she was this badass spy. And none of the new guys knew that she had this in her back. So she ends up on the run from everybody, but really in control of the situation. And fantastic period set spy piece. I love reading comics of different genres, and this is a cool one. You know, the spy, you can see how the media affects the storytelling. It's very cinematic, though. I mean, comics are, you know, the closest thing you're going to get to reading a movie. That's why they end up looking like storyboards. I mean, they're basically the same thing, you know. So so we're going to read Velvet Volume 1. I got to remember what Volume 1 looks like because it doesn't look like this. I bought the individual issues when they were coming out. It's a great book. So next month, Velvet number 1. Thanks everybody, and we will see you in a month. Bye, Vivian.
Bye.